So this session, from conventional assessment practices to continuous and comprehensive evaluation, a review of best practices. Now in my presentation, I'll have to be short as Mark said that the time is like we are already late. So my presentation is in three parts. First, I'll begin with the concept of assessment, how it was in the conventional sense and how CC is different, and of course connected with education. And then I'll come to the Haryana model of CCE, because I was Director Academic at Haryana Board of School Education earlier, and so I'll speak a bit about that. And then the NIOS model of CCE. I'll try to do it fast, though it is difficult. Now, when we talk of assessment or evaluation, we cannot think of it in isolation. It has to be thought in the context of education as a whole. Generally, what happens is that we isolate evaluation from what education is, and we think evaluation is more important than education itself. That is what happened in our system throughout the years. So we have to begin with what education really is. And in that context only we can think of evaluation. So the ultimate real aim of education is all-round balanced development of personality, which includes physical development, intellectual development, emotional development, social development, moral development, and spiritual development. All aspects, or we can say a holistic health in all these, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and so on. We want to develop healthy human beings in all these aspects. And what I got this from was, most of you have studied education psychology also. You know that for every stage, there are some developmental tasks. From one stage to go to another, you have to complete those developmental tasks. And these four, which I have listed here, they are the developmental tasks of adolescents to become adults. And of course, to become an adult, the adolescents need to be autonomous from the cognitive point of view. Cognitive autonomy, emotional autonomy, moral autonomy, and economic autonomy. So cognitive autonomy means thinking for one's own self. In general, when in our education system, I think this is quite missing. We don't help the children to develop thinking skills, what we call skills now, thinking skills. Actually, skills is a very superficial word for thinking, but still, because it is in parlance, so we say thinking skills. So we need to develop thinking skills among our students. And then emotional autonomy. One has to feel for oneself. We don't help our children to be able to be emotionally mature. And of course, moral autonomy, what is going on in our country or elsewhere right now, we need moral autonomy quite a bit. And that is also important, which is totally missing from our system. And then, of course, economic autonomy, this we always think of. We think that this is the most important, though it is not in education, but still it is important. And we think that our students should be able to become autonomous from the economic point of view. That means they stand on their own feet, make a living for themselves, earn a living for themselves. And so these are the four developmental tasks, as I said, to become adults. Now, in the conventional assessment practices, what were they? There, in the conventional system of assessment, there was stress on summative assessment or summative evaluation. That means the formative aspect of assessment or evaluation was missing. In fact, even now, CBSE has started, in class 10, they have done away with the board examinations. At least they've made it optional. But if we see the scenario all over the country, it is one board examination that we depend on at the end of class 10 or class 12 later on. The child's life is made or marred because of one board examination, which is a summative assessment, summative evaluation. And formative assessment is missing, and so even in the school system, more or less, what was happening was that stress was on summative, the product, evaluating what the child has learned at the end of the year or at the end of whatever period we see. So assessment was for learning, was not for learning, but for pass or fail. This is what the conventional assessment is. It is not for learning, but for pass or fail. Whereas when we talk of formative assessment, it is an integral part of learning. It should help in learning. It should promote learning rather than mere finding out who has passed and who has failed. And so that means the teacher himself or herself has passed or failed. So the product was important, not the process. Assessment as an end in itself, as I said, it was an end in itself, not a tool for diagnosis, remediation or enrichment. It was just an end in itself assessment. And then restricted to cognitive domain. We all know that there are at least 3 domains we can talk of: cognitive, and then we talk of psychomotor, and we talk of the emotions, which are, so the 3 domains, only the cognitive domain is being taken care of. And that too, in fact, not the whole of it. As I said, thinking skills are totally missing. If we do not help our children to think for themselves, then the cognitive domain is not being taken care of also. And even in that, we were restricted to the lowest in the rung of that ladder, that is knowledge, which is the lowest. We think that knowledge is the ultimate, which is not. It is the lowest rung of that ladder. So focus on knowledge, not on higher order outcomes or objectives. So knowledge, we restrict ourselves to knowledge, and in fact it is not even knowledge, because even knowledge is not just information, and we were restricting ourselves only to information. And the assessment, because of all these factors, was stressful and not learner-friendly. And it aimed at finding what the learner does not know, rather than what she knows. This is what the conventional assessment practices are. They don't help in finding out what the child knows. They only help in finding out what the child does not know, pass or fail. And so it was restricted largely to written tests, pen and paper, answering questions, not asking. That is also important, asking questions, which becomes important in the new paradigm. We all know that in the CCE that we are talking about. In contrast, what does CCE have in store for us? Why CCE? Why is it important? Because the process is more important than product. So when we talk of continuous evaluation, in CCE there are 2 C's. Continuous and comprehensive. So when we talk of continuous evaluation, it is, what we are saying is that process is more important than product, which was more important than in the conventional practices. And then assessment, not relying on one summative test or examination, because it is continuous. We have a series of